has lived and died and already gone. Okay? So if you pay attention to what's being said, you're going to glean a lot out of this. Okay? So Manuel, Sable, and Ishmael were brothers born in Persia of a pagan father and a Christian mother. As soon as I read this portion, right, I think to myself, even in our church, about some of the fathers that are raising their children, and then you have some of the mothers that don't want anything to do with God. So already there's something that I could relate to or I could reflect on, okay? They were educated in the spirit of Christianity and were baptized. As Christians, they were high-ranking officials at the court of King Alamander. Okay, so they're in a pagan place, they become Christians, they're in a pagan land, and these Christians end up becoming high-ranking officials under this king. They were sent to Emperor Julian the Apostate to conduct negotiations to confirm peace between the Persian and the Greco-Roman empires. Does anybody know who Julian the Apostate is?
He was somebody that renounced Christian. He was a Christian when he was younger, but as soon as he came into power, he denounced Christianity, became a pagan, and wanted to force everybody to worship the pagan gods.
Right. So his name, his title is actually Julian the Apostate. I mean, he has the title, the Apostate. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as Natalie just said, he was a Christian, but he apostatized and became a pagan. Right. He did a lot of things that were completely against the Christian faith. Okay. So, the apostate emperor arranged a blasphemous celebration in honor of the idols in Chalcedon. At the celebration, the emperor, with his noblemen, offered sacrifices to idols. The Persian emissaries absented themselves from the celebration. So, the Persian emissaries went, and during this time, Julian, again, has this celebration of the idols, and they just quietly step away, okay? The emperor summoned them and ordered that they take part in the celebration and to offer sacrifices to the gods. So you got to remember, this is 362. It's not the modern day where you can be free to love who you want to love and free to do it whatever you want to do and go to whatever church that you wanted to go to, right? This is a time where there's persecution of Christians. This is a barbaric time, okay? So the emperor summoned them to he wanted them to sacrifice to the gods. They declared that they were foreign citizens and that they came as emissaries of the Persian king for the sake of establishing peace between the two empires and for not anything else. Okay, so they're telling the emperor, right? We came just to bring in peace. Okay? Remember, they're coming from a pagan place, going to a place that's supposed to be Christian, but happens to be a pagan emperor, okay? And they're telling this guy, they're standing in front of the emperor, okay? And that they were Christians. They continued to talk to them, that they were Christians, and they considered it unworthy to worship dead idols and offer them sacrifices. Imagine what the emperor was thinking. These guys are saying to him, we're not going to worship down to your dead idols, right? I mean, talk about a lot of guts, right? A lot of courage, okay? So the emperor became enraged and cast them into prison. The next day, he brought them out and again began to dispute with them about the faith. But the holy brothers were adamant and unwavering. They were then bound naked to trees, beaten and scraped with an iron brush. During their torture, they prayed to God with thanksgiving for their tortures. O sweet Jesus, these torments are sweet for the sake of thy love. An angel of God appeared to them, comforted them, and removed every pain from them. Contrary to all rules of the international relations, the wicked Emperor Julian finally pronounced judgment that the three brothers be beheaded. When they were beheaded, there was a great earthquake. The earth split and received the bodies of the holy martyrs, so that the pagans could not burn their bodies, as directed by the emperor. The earth later gave up their bodies of the martyrs, so that the Christians could find them and honorably bury them. Over their relics there occurred many miracles, seeing which many pagans converted to the Christian faith. When the Persian king heard how Julian had inhumanly given his emissaries over to death, he prepared an army against him. Convinced of victory, Julian set out against the Persian Empire, but he was overwhelmingly defeated and perished in shame, to the joy and laughter of the entire world. Okay? So, does anybody have any feelings, or what is a reflection that you have after hearing what these three men and their courage?
They probably heard about Julian. I mean, they try to be diplomatic about it, but they didn't come and denounce him right off the bat. They just quietly left. But Julian was such a fanatic about his paganism. He probably was angry. Because he had been a Christian, it might have been spite, a real massive rebellion. Because actually, his I don't remember all the details, but his family was actually basically murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Because how.
So they might have heard about it. Right? There's no internet, there's no electricity, there's no nothing, right?
Yeah.
And there's just these three guys wanting to usher in some sort of peace, right?
Right. And even back then, if you send ambassadors, you treat them well.
Right.
Because by attacking the ambassador, that's a declaration of war.
Right. But stepping back, right? Yeah. Even beyond those things, what do you all think about when they're standing before the most quote-unquote powerful person of this empire and what they said? I mean, would we have the courage to do the same?
I don't think so.
Huh?
I don't think so. We would have the courage. Because as I remember with the COVID-19 just a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago already, everybody was panicking. And it was just news here, news there, and then we were all confused, and we were even afraid to hug each other and kids, because there was a point of time that my other son was kind of like so in fear, and he was already in the Christian life, going to the Protestant church. It happens that I came here as a vacation with my mom, and this was all this commotion, right? I left my job, and I was like, something's going on. This is weird. And then when I came here to Lakeland to visit him, he was so afraid of me coming to a place and trying to he was so afraid that I would come with the viruses. Mm-hmm. And like, Mom, if you go to visit Danny, he was kind of afraid to tell me, Mom, if you leave my house here to visit Danny, you're not going to be able to come back to my house. Because Danny's exposed to the hospital people and this and that. And I told him clearly, and I said, I don't know where you stand with your faith, but my faith says to me, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to come in here to hug you, to kiss you, and I'm not afraid going to his house and coming back here. If your faith is not as strong as I feel, I'm sorry about you, but I'm packing and I'm leaving, I'm not coming back. Right. That's the way you want to be. And then he felt that strong message from me, and he took a moment and he told everybody in the house to leave us alone. And then he said, I'm sorry, Mom. I was just a coward. I was afraid. That means that your faith is stronger than mine, and that I shouldn't be panicking about it. Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, because I'm not going to choose. Nobody's going to make me choose between you and your brother. Not even you is going to make me choose. I told him, like, you are the lucky one that I always come to your house and I see your kid more, because I come here and I see you, and sometimes you go over there in Miami and I see them, and they be closer to me. But I'm not going to leave here not going to see Danny for my brother. Yeah. I stand very strong on this one. And he goes like, it's true, Mom. Your faith is stronger than mine. And it's me. It's me that I'm afraid I should not be this way. And I said, I'm glad that helped, because I'm not going to give up on my kids no matter what. Tsunami, no tsunami, viruses, whatever, I'm here. And, that part. And he was afraid for the kids.
Right.
So he wouldn't be afraid if he was in that place because of the kids.
Right.
So
That's fair. Anybody else?
The torture came before what they have to say to the emperor.
No, they said to the emperor that they weren't going to worship idols or do sacrifices, and the emperor first threw them in jail, right? And then they came back, and he says, and then he disputed with them, right? He tried to talk them out of their faith. So first he used logic, right? He tried to talk them into their faith, and they wouldn't have nothing to do. They would not move. I mean, you got to understand, right? These guys are coming from a pagan place, right? And they're going to before a pagan emperor in a world where there's hardly any, the Christians were afraid, right? The Christians were worshiping in secret. But these guys were unwavering in their faith.
Then they got tortured.
And then they got tortured. And while they were being tortured, they were praising God for being tortured for their faith, right? And that's why I said the painful truth, right? The painful truth of our faith is that we could get tortured for our faith. And we have to be strong enough to do so. And, you know, to be those men and women that are strong enough. But, you know, Efrosyne, what you said, it came with age and it came with wisdom. You know, because you're at this point in your life and you've gotten stronger in your faith that you're like, you're not gonna make me choose, and if you don't want me to come back, it's fine. But I mean, you know, and that strength is what he needed.
exactly, as it was, that was the point of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was working through me, you know, because I felt like it's incredible how fearful they're making us not to be able to be with your family.
Absolutely.
And I was like, I told him like, Dan, I told Alex, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen sooner or later.
Yep.
Nobody's gonna be here forever.
That was before you.
That was before you. That was when you started.
And then I got it.
And then look, see how it is.
And then he came.
And then he came. Look at what happens. Then he was by himself.
But before he came, I had gone to Robinson.
That's why it was a change.
Like my uncle got it, and I didn't care. I was gonna go help him.
And we did, and you did.
I
He did. He went.
My uncle was very grateful I came to help him. I didn't get it because of him. I got it.
I think you
way later.
Your daughter got it.
Yeah, she got it from
Yeah,
school.
she got it from school.
But either way, it all starts, you know.
But even with my daughter, when she got it, I wasn't all like, go to that room, like, I'm taking care of her. And then I got it, and then my brother came. But you see how, like,
exactly how it
risking their life
works.
a little.
How he works, because when I came, he was so afraid, me visiting him and coming back to his house, bringing the virus.
Yeah.
Everybody was taking the shoes off. My mom was cleaning this and cleaning that. I said, like, what? Why do you clean your shoes for? What's this mystery?
They got us to behave.
You know, and look what happened.
I thought it was pretty stupid that wiping down everything, because I'm thinking this is a respiratory virus.
Yeah, but look how much.
The countertops? What?
Yeah.
But look how much they controlled us over toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right? Just over toilet paper, we were controlled.
And you know how much it worked on Alex's face? The way it worked out was that the only person who was able to assist his brother, it was him, Alexander. He had to come to get him. And I called him and said, like, Alex, you better be ready for this. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen.
Right.
And you are the one who's gonna be there for your brother. I cannot go over there. Your wife cannot bring him food because she's pregnant. So you are the one who take care of your brother. And he went, took him to the hospital. He said, Mama, just wear whatever in your mouth, open your windows and drive him to the hospital. That's what I told him. Yeah, you're the only one. So he did.
And he didn't get it.
And he didn't get it.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I got it because I get everything.
All right.
Yeah.
So again, I just got a couple more to go over. That's why we read these things, is because they're supposed to inspire us. They're supposed to give us this courage and this hope, right? Because these people did this in an age and a time, right, where there was no internet. Like I said, there's no, you know, and there was no. These people are in a place where there's no Christians, and they became Christians because of one parent, right? The mother's faith brought these guys into their faith enough that they were willing to be tortured. Okay? All right, so today, for June 21st, we celebrate the holy martyr Julian of Tarsus in Cilicia, 305. Julian was of noble and senatorial origin. He lived in Tarsus in Cilicia and suffered during the reign of Diocletian. Even though he was only 18 years of age when he was subjected to torture for his faith, St. Julian was sufficiently educated and strengthened in Christian piety. The imperial deputy led him from town to town for an entire year, torturing him, and all the while trying to persuade him to deny Christ. Julian's mother followed her son at a distance. Again, the mom, right? When the deputy seized Julian's mother and sent her to counsel her son to deny Christ, she spoke to him for 3 days in prison, giving him the opposite advice, teaching him and encouraging him not to lose heart, but to go to his death with thanksgiving and courage. Okay? What do you hear so far?
That's a great mother.
Right? That's the parents that we need to become.
Yeah.
That's the courage that we need to show our children, that no matter what, that you are supposed to hold on to your faith, right? So the torturers then sewed Julian into a sack with sand, scorpions, and serpents, and cast the sack into the sea. And Julian's mother also died under torture. His relics were thrown onto the shore by the waves, and the faithful translated them to Alexandria and buried them honorably in the year 305. St. Julian's relics were later translated to Antioch. St. John Chrysostom himself delivered a eulogy on the martyr Julian. Okay, who's St. John Chrysostom? Right? St. John Chrysostom's name, that's not his name, that's a title, right? Chrysostom means golden mouth, okay? So, during a sermon, he said about Julian, Chrysostom said, from the mouth of the martyr proceeded a holy voice, and together with the voice of a light emanated brighter than the rays of the sun. Further, he added, take anyone, be it a madman or one possessed, and bring him to the grave of the saint, where the relics of the martyr repose, and you will see how he, the demon, without fail will leap out and flee as a burning fire. It is obvious from these words how numerous must have been the miracles that had taken place at the grave of St. Julian.
What are you doing?
Right? So again, this guy, when I read this last night, this guy gave me hope. Right? This guy gave me, and how old was he?
18.
18. Right? It's not even our age. This guy is 18. Right? And what did his mother do? Right? While he was in prison, after the emperor told her to go in and convince him to deny Christ, encouraged him to do what?
Keep the faith.
Even if
He got killed.
he died. I mean, that is what we need to be teaching our children. Right? We need to be teaching our children that their faith is the most important thing in their lives. And if we're not teaching them that, we're failing as parents. It's good to learn math and it's good all that, but if you're not teaching them how to become Christians, that's our job, and that's what Satan has tried to do with our families for years and years and years, is to destroy our families, right? We've talked about this numerous times. The second couple of people that we celebrate today are the Venerable Julius, the priest of Novara, and his brother St. Julian, deacon of the 5th century. Julius and Julian were brothers from the Greek province of Myrmidоnia. From childhood, they were reared in Christianity with the vow that they would always live in chastity and serve the church. Julius was a presbyter, a priest, and Julian a deacon. They received a decree from Emperor Theodosius the Younger to destroy pagan temples and build Christian churches throughout the empire. So, in essence, they were given a task to go through and destroy places of worship that were temples. That's kind of like us going into Buddhist temples or whatever else, right? And then build churches on top of it, right? So, like two apostles, these two brothers converted non-Christians into Christians in the East and the West and built churches. They built more than 100 churches during their lifetime. They reposed peacefully in the Lord near Milan. The inhabitants of Milan invoked the help of St. Julius against wolves. Then there's a hymn. When Julius and his brother Julian had built their 99th church to the Most High God, Julian constructed a tomb for his brother, the Holy Julius. And when he showed his brother the grave, Julius meekly said to him, "Prepare yourself, my brother, in the flesh. This grave was built for you. Prepare yourself to go to God. Before your brother, the sinful Julius." And God designated Julius to build yet 100th church on a certain isolated island. As the most glorious Julius said, so it happened. The younger brother reposed before the older brother, and the older brother added the 100th church. And when he built the 100th church on the island, then he also took up his habitation in eternity. I mean, can you imagine the courage that these guys had? Going into these places, right? These pagan places, and destroying the church, first of all, and then having enough guts to build a church and convert everybody to Christianity.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
And we have a hard time talking to people at the laundromat or the store, right? We need to, that's the thing we need to learn is we have to have this courage, okay? All right, so the other thing that's in these pages is there's a reflection, okay? When a man begins to train himself in keeping silent, silence seems to him to be lesser than speech. But when he is trained in silence, then he knows that speech is lesser than silence. A monk said to Saint Sisoes, "I would like to preserve my heart, but I cannot." The elder responded, "How can we preserve the heart when the gate of our heart, the tongue, stands open?" Carlos, the nephew of Lycurgus, once was asked why his uncle issued so few laws. He replied, "For those who speak little, many laws are not needed." What do you think? What do you hear?
People that too much. There's a lot of talk that just idleness, and sometimes it's better to reflect and think. But if you just talk about foolishness all the time, you're not really concentrating.
And what else do we lose when we talk too much?
We don't listen.
We don't listen to who?
God.
God, oftentimes, right? Oftentimes, we are so busy, like I said, trying to become the masters of our own destiny, the masters of our own life, that we fail to be quiet in order to hear God in His glory. Right?
Oh, speaking about all these Christian women married to pagan guys. You said, well, how does that happen? Of course, they had arranged marriages, but why you had that happen? Because Christians did not believe in abortion.
Right?
And a lot of times, males were, like in China or other places, males are preferred. You want to have a son, keep the family name or whatever. And so you think, so they killed their daughters if they or aborted them or whatever. So the pagans had sons that needed to get married, and there wasn't enough women for them. So then they, so that's.
So the guy ended up marrying the Christian ladies.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because pagan men were not able to get women like them, and so they got married with Christians. That God's will was done through the Christian women. So the purpose. That's what I see the purpose. Because on the stories, always the mother was the Christian.
But imagine if we had that much faith.
Yeah.
I mean, these women were standing strong in their faith. It didn't matter what their husbands were doing.
Yeah.
It mattered what they were doing and how much they wanted to glorify
and
God.
it was a specific job for the mother to get the son to know Christ.
That's right.
It was the mother, because the mother was always with them. And it was always the story. And that the mother was the one
And the mother ends up doing that a lot of the times because the fathers end up failing in their job. Too.
Exactly. One example is my life.
Right?
My mom was a Christian. My dad was a Catholic, you know, whatever Catholic was then and is still now. But then my mom stood strong in her faith.
Right.
And where we ended up? Christians, all of us.
Yeah.
Even the one that didn't want to.
And you stayed strong, and you stayed as strong in your faith as possibly as you could.
Yeah.
And now, even Photios here, became a herald for his faith, so much so that most of your whole family became Orthodox,
From the least likely guy. From the agnostic.
Well, you had two choices: either do what you were asked or get swallowed by a whale. Right? All right. So the last thing for these days, and like I said, I would encourage everybody to get these, and it's a few minutes every day. So there always is a sermon at the end of these as well, and it's usually based off of scripture. So the one for today is called the homily on sowing and reaping. I thought this was a very, very powerful little excerpt here. He who sows iniquity reaps misfortune. Proverbs 22:8. Who wrote Proverbs? Solomon. Right? So Solomon wrote the Proverbs, and Solomon was touted to be
wisest man on
the
earth.
wisest man ever, right?
But he didn't stay.
But he was the dumbest guy ever too. Okay?
It's because
So-
all the cedar wood, I'm just saying.
Right. I don't know. I have a hard enough saying on the hard straight and narrow with one woman. I kind of made you 1,000. So anyway, 1,000 women. All right. So listen to this. If you commit iniquity, misfortune may pass you by on the very day you commit that iniquity. But misfortune has heard the voice of iniquity and will still unavoidably come in its own time. Some sowing is sweet, but the harvest is bitter. Some sowing resembles life, but the fruit and the harvest of that sowing is death. Pay heed and learn from the Holy Scripture. Eve sowed iniquity through disobedience, and pain in childbirth befell her. Cain sowed iniquity through fratricide, and pain and sleepless wandering throughout the earth befell him. Sodom and Gomorrah sowed iniquity, and reaped the pain of a horrible death. The sons of Eli, the high priest, sowed iniquity, for they defiled themselves near the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? The sons of Eli did some evil things, right? It's in the book of Samuel, I believe. And they did iniquity where? Next to the Ark of the Covenant, which was the most holy place, right? The Ark of the Covenant is where the Spirit of God would come and dwell, right? God told people not to touch the Ark, right? And when they did, that they would die, okay? So, the sons of Eli and the high priest sowed iniquity, for they defiled themselves near the Ark of the Covenant, and they reaped suffering, for they bitterly lost their lives in battle. Call to mind Saul, his iniquity and his suffering. And again, call to mind Ahab and Jezebel. And again, call to mind Herod and Judas. And again, call to mind today and yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and every other day gone by, and listen to the words of every day. He who sows iniquity reaps misfortune. For there is a village in the world that does not have this teaching before its eyes. Is there a roof that does not conceal beneath it such knowledge? Is there any man living who has not witnessed this teaching and the living examples around him? O all-wise Lord, if we did not know thy will, we would be less responsible. But since thou givest us to know thy will, O all merciful one, grant us the strength to fulfill it throughout all the days of our lives. To thee be glory and praise forever. What do you guys think of that?
We gotta be careful of what we sow. Even in any instant, and in everyday thing that you do. I'm thinking bad of a person, judging, and assuming the other person's thought, or, that you get paid for, right?
Right? And as it says, right? If you commit iniquity, misfortune may pass you by on that very day you commit the iniquity, but misfortune has heard the voice of iniquity and will unavoidably come in its own time. Right? In the end, we have to answer for the choices that we make. Right? If I have an affair with my wife, I may not get found out right now, but eventually it will be found out. It will all come out under the light. Right? If I steal something and nobody else knows about it, eventually it will come out.
Well, it's just like these politicians when they, maybe when they were in college, they did some things they should be ashamed of. Figure everybody forgot about it, and then they want to be to have some high position.
Senator.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at some of the actors, right? Kevin Spacey.
Mm-hmm.
You heard about with Kevin Spacey, doing what he did, and it came out years later. Decades later.
Actually, it hurts worse then. It would have been better if it came out earlier and get over it,
Yeah, when I was growing up, anytime I got in trouble at school, I always went home and told my parents right away because I knew it'd be a lot worse if I told them later. I would rather just face the music and the consequences right there and then and there. Right? Does anybody have any reflection about? I just wanted to try something different and see if you got, but does anybody have any reflection about what you heard tonight with the saints? Does it give you courage when you read the lives of saints?
It does make you think about, because if you read the story completely and you go back in time and then you compare it to this time and you go like, wait a minute, that was very hard, very hard. We have it very easy now, so we have no excuse.
Well, I would say we have it easy now, which has made our faith very hard. Right? We have become weak and complacent, right? We have become weak in our faith because nobody wants to answer for their consequences, right? And that, and slowly as time has gone on, what has happened, right? Less and less people, I always, I've been harping about confession. Confession is not for me, right? Confession is for you to be able to reflect on yourself, on ourselves. Confession for me too. Confession is for us to reflect on ourselves to start to get to become the people that we need to be, right? But as time has wore on, the Orthodox Church has made it easier and easier because economia, eventually this mercy becomes too merciful.
It does, I'll be honest with you. It doesn't give me courage. It lets me, what it does to me is that it lets me know, it shows me what type of courage I might have to have in the time it will come. But that's different from, does it give me courage? That, honestly, it doesn't. But it lets me know, like, this is the type of courage you might need to have if the environment changes. And so, and all I can say is I hope that by the time that time comes, if it does, like you said, we could stay comfortable for a long time and keep struggling to even have a little bit of faith and everything's so safe. So I just hope, and then I just hope that if the time ever comes, I get that courage. But I'd be lying if I said that reading that gives me courage. It just lets me know that some people have that courage, but I think the conditions were right to produce courage. Right? So,
but I think it's practiced. I don't think they just came on that day and were like, let's stick up for our faith. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work in a vacuum. I think they practiced. I think they were prepared for that moment. I think they were more than prepared.
Yeah, because
you watch like a Tom Brady game in football, and it's like he doesn't look like, if you watch every game from start to finish, he doesn't look like he's excellent. He misses a throw here. He's off here. But it's play to play. And it's played to the end of the fourth quarter until the bell rings. You know what I mean? And so for me, when I hear that, it's like, it lets me know, kind of the same way. It doesn't really give me the most courage either, but it makes me think about like what I did earlier today, where it's like, I didn't think that way. Even in a small, little, minute, micro moment, You know, where they're facing an emperor, that's macro. That may never happen in your life. You may never be called in that way. Most of us probably never will be. But it's like, but you can still have that courage when you're driving through a light, or when you're talking to your ex, or you know what I mean, or whatever the case may be. When you've got a disciplined Becca and she's running around crazy.
Well, I got a chance to have. I got a chance to.
That's the same moment. Is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I got a chance to have like a microcosm. So when the COVID shot, I'm a nurse. So they were coming after us. They even came. I was looking at Advent Health, and they said, you know, by such date, you gotta have a shot, or there's an exemption. There's always been an exemption, but it was click and you're done. Now they changed it all of a sudden. They were making you write whole paragraphs as to why. And people were scrambling, going into the Bible, looking for the scripture, whatever, and then somebody would turn it in, right? And they get approved. And then you go to how? You know? But some people would get unapproved. So we're like, man, what, you know, how come some, you know? So, and a lot of nurses took the shot. Which I was like, why wouldn't you wait till the last day? Something could happen. They could cancel it the last day or whatever. Why would you take it, you know, weeks before or whatever? I went into the last day, you know? So I went ahead and did the same thing. I said, well, I'm going to try to do the exemptions. I copied some guy's paper or whatever. I thought it was, oh, this is so wrong. Like, I don't have to write this. I just got to say I don't want it in my body. I said, fine, I'll play your stupid little game, you know? And I submitted it. The next day, it was canceled by the Supreme Court or whatever. But that didn't take away from the decision. Because even if I didn't know it was gonna happen. I didn't know the Supreme Court was going to. The next day, I expected to get fired because I wasn't going to get fired. And I was like, whatever. And like you were saying, we prep it, right? We prep, right? That's what you were saying, that you prep. Is that what you were saying today?
Prepare.
Prepare. The reason I was able to do that is some faith and some practicality. My mom's a witness. I've never tasted, I always make sure not to taste such a good life. I continue to drive old cars and live very below my means, even though I'm a nurse and there's should make money, you should do more. No, I never felt secure with that career, you know. And then they do this, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm not taking a shot. And then you're gonna lose your career, then you're gonna lose that hourly rate, that lifestyle that you have. I don't care. Thankfully, I've always kept myself living below my means, practically, and also because and now for faith, but before it was just practical. And so I was ready to, like, you know, so I guess I'll go work with my brother for half the money I make. But a lot of people weren't willing to do this. They weren't willing to walk away. But something told me, and this is before I was Orthodox, that, you know, once you let. So I wasn't Christian yet, but the law, the truth was still. That's why I'm not against studying philosophy, because that's what they're doing. Philosophers are looking for God anyways. You know, it's just Christianity already has it, so they're just kind of going in they're taking the long run, which is what I do. But the truth that this is wrong is already in you. It's just Christians express that truth in the Bible, and the rest of us, if you're not Christian, you have an idea this is wrong. And so, you know, so thankfully that was there, but for me that was like a minor version of that, because I was about to go into uncertainty, career loss, start from the beginning, but like the body is like, this is it, this is where I draw the line. You're not gonna jab me with something I don't know, and I'll live to work another day.
Isn't that moment where you're stepping outside the boat and walking on the water?
Yeah, you're just like, I guess I'll figure it out.
And then, even I may say, it hasn't been the first time that he had to walk on the water without him knowing it. Because the time when things were more crazier, not a vaccine, but because, you know, when she was about to be born, and it was going like this and that, and we were going circles and circles, and then God you everywhere, from like being your faith facing this or facing that.
Oh, she was gonna be born?
Or after, you know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, for me, it's like, I'm just thinking about like today, like I had told Amberly earlier in the week that I would like wash her car or whatever, and I was trying to plan it because it was like it's freaking hot and I hate doing it.
And then God
Like
washed your
I
feet.
can't just clean, you know. Like if I'm doing something, I'm gonna do it. You know, so it's like it takes all my energy and like my focus, and it's intense. So I try to do that in the morning. Well, it didn't happen the other day for whatever reason, and then today came, and I had already told her. And I got there, and I'm like, I was waiting this morning to try and do it, but it was pouring. It's like, oh, awesome, the day I say, you know. And so I had committed to it. Well, I had a poor attitude because I was like, I really don't want to do it at like 12 o'clock. It's hot as fire right now, and she was disappointed. And so then it was like a guilt trip. And so then it was like, well, I said I would do it, so I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to do it. But it was like I had this poor attitude. It's like that's what I'm saying. So for me, it's the same spirit, the courageous spirit of doing what you said, your word. So it's like that's a microcosm of the same exact courage that it takes to tell an emperor, hey, you know, we're not doing that. Not today.
We're not worshiping your dead idols.
Yeah. So to me, I see those as the same. It's like that kind of like salvific moment
Like those little
happens 24/7 all day. Like
prepping for the big one.
yeah. You know, like how Alea responds in a poor moment with a friend. You know what I mean? Like, are you freaking out? Are you pain? Like it's the same exact moment, even for an 8-year-old, as it is the brother sitting in front of the emperor.
And you realize that's what liturgy is for, is preparing you for heaven.
Yeah.
Right? So everything that we do is preparing you for the big game. This is all training, right? This is all training. All the heartaches we go through, right? All the hurts and the pains and the suffering we go through, all the losses that we go through. Are we really going to trust God? Or is our faith really going to be what is the most important thing in our life? Our faith in Christ.
And our faith is tested at the moment that we wake up.
Right.
And then Orthodoxy has helped me with their prayers. First of all, the one in the morning that says to help me to face whatever comes to me and do it with love, not to answer back to people and criticize and this and that. That's a very good prayer to start the day with. And that's how if you do the prayer, even if you don't know it by memory, but you remember the most important words of the prayer, your day starts better.
Right.
I'm telling you because when I read that prayer the first time, and I put it on my phone and I read it, some of the words that were like, oh, this is the beginning of the day. Please help me to face it this way, the way that I needed to face it with whatever comes to me. So it's from the beginning we open our eyes.
Right.
It's a test. Every moment, even if you're just at home, grandma, a mom in the house, it's a good way to start a day. Your day with faith, the day with peace, and with love, with all that you have to face.
And like I said, I mean, the thing is like, we have humanized God too much, but at the same time, we have not put the human side of Him in the right place, right? Because Christ became that, right? So when we pray, I talked to somebody last night about 9:30. They were struggling, there's something going on in their family, something's going on, and I said, when you go to God, you got to have a conversation with God. You got to be realistic with God. You can't hide your anger. So go to God with that anger. I'm angry, Lord, right? If you're sad, I'm sad, Lord. I need you to help me get through this sadness, right? I'm depressed. I need you to help me get through that depression. We need to go to God with our raw emotion, with our raw selves.
Whatever you're going through.
Right. Because we're supposed to, that's the way, how has everybody gained a relationship with me? It's not the relationship that I have with everybody. It's not just been the happy smile stuff. It's been the tears, right? The hugs while you're crying, the hugs while you're in pain, the comfort while you're in sorrow. That's what's made the relationship with every single person of the church in one way or another has been the real raw emotions that we have. And these stories that we read with these saints are just a portion of these people's lives that we've pulled out, we've kind of used as an example. And for like what you said, and perhaps you're right. If maybe it doesn't give you courage, but maybe hope.
Right.
Right? And it's the hope that you will have that courage.
The hope is that somebody already did it before me, so it can be done.
Right, and that's why we have these stories, right? And that's why we have each other. Because there's been things where, like your mom said, she was praying for you, and I'm sure your mother probably prays. Right? She's probably a praying woman, so she's been praying for you.
Oh, yeah.
So she prays for you. You saw that prayer, and then she's been praying for you, and then when you're like, I became a Christian, she was like, oh, thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
She's just not been praying for hair.
When I first started going to the
Now I'm gonna go ask her. I'm gonna go confront her.
Can you cover that
Yeah.
for me? When I first started going to the Orthodox Church in Illinois, one of my friends said that for him as a convert, that studying the saints gave him hope because he always felt like Christ was this unattainable thing. We can, we're supposed to be like Christ, but no, we're never going to get there. And so he said the saints were people who were just like us that did amazing things for God.
Right.
And so that's where the hope came for him. They can do this, why can't we?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're supposed to strive to do that.
Of course, that wasn't the
Right.
point.
No, I know.
But
I know
it
what
was like, those were the steps along the
Right,
way
right.
that were more attainable.
Yeah, and then some of the saints, they really had messed up lives before they became.
Right. Well, Paul kind of did.
Well, actually, one of my favorite saints is he's on so many of the icons, is the guy at the feet of the cross. He's on how many icons we have in the church. Right. Even on the icon of the Ascension, he's right there in the middle holding the cross.
That's the one Harry wanted to pick.
The thief the two thieves next to Christ.
The good thing is
The
holding
good
the cross.
Yeah, it shows a little guy holding the cross.
On the icon of the Last Judgment, he's the first one in the door. The icon for the Ascension, he's holding the cross.
The good thief.
The good thief. The one that, he didn't start out good even that day, right? One gospel says both of the thieves ridiculed him.
Oh.
And then the other gospel said they ridiculed him, and then the one thief said, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
Yeah.
So they both started out, and in that moment of time, in 3 hours, that guy became, like St. John Chrysostom says, the last thing that the thief stole was paradise.
Yeah.
Right? He stole paradise.
It's a nice saying.
Yeah, and that's beautiful, and that guy gives me hope, right? He didn't get communion, he didn't get baptized, he didn't get any of those things. But there is these exceptions to the rule.
He reached a contrite heart at the very end,
Right.
and he got it.
Right.
Yeah,
Harry wanted to pick him, and I wouldn't let him because of his
and they had, and also there were examples where there was some persecutor and he tortured somebody, and tortured and then maybe even killed them, and then they repented and became saints.
Yeah.
Well, St. Moses the Black
Yeah, exactly.
is one of the good ones.
Or King Tiridates. I mean, once he became converted, he was pushing Christianity, So,
I feel like we're all because it said like we're all kind of unfaithful to Christ. But it's like everyone has a line they won't cross as far as unfaithfulness. And then some people have it kind of far, some people have it kind of close, in the middle. And so I guess God knows where you're at. So all these little things, and you fail, but there's the one line that you kind of know in your heart you won't cross. But you're also hoping it never comes your way, so you don't have to prove that.
And at the same time, you want to continue bringing that line closer and closer.
Right.
So that way, you never cross any line.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying these little lines before are okay, but you're working to bring it closer, so you have a higher standard every time. But sometimes the line that you put that I won't cross this one, something that comes to you when you least expect it. And for me, I guess it kind of was that COVID shot. So I never thought that they would get so authoritative. So I'm like, I'm not happy with the medical system here and there, but I'll play the game because I don't have enough courage to walk away. But I don't know where my line is, but I found it real quick because they brought it to me. They were like, whoa, I guess that's my line right there. So I'm not doing it. I will get uncomfortable for you. See what I'm saying? So I wonder what's the next time. Like I wonder that because that wasn't a direct test of faith. It sort of kind of was, but it's more like, you know, you can lose your job to take your body. If you were a Christian, you would look at it in a Christian way, but I'm saying, man, next time they might come. The thing is that in this country, they come at you a different angle, but they haven't come like they did to the Russian. They were asking them to step on the icon.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, we don't want to circumvent, we don't want to like get you to indirectly lose faith, like in the culture shell. That would be like an indirect, you know, fear. We want you to actually step on your icon, spit on your whatever. You're like, damn, what would I? And imagine they come like, imagine they say, no, we're not going after your job. We just want you to step on your icon, but you can still keep your job.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. You can still be able to provide for your family.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Just step on the icon, something like that. So, yeah, but I agree. Like, you want to move that line close, but I think God gives you time to build the courage to like, you know what? My line will be a little put, and then eventually, I think that's what the monks do eventually, right? Like they sin less and less and less until they're hardly sinning.
Well,
You know?
they sin less and less and less, and they realize how much more sin
Right.
they are.
Right.
Well, they get microscopic at that
Right.
point.
They-
You know, they make atomic lines. Right?
But again,
But they confess every night to their.
but again, the devil's in the details,
Yeah,
right? Even a thought
yeah,
can be a sin.
yeah, yeah,
You know, a lot of times we're like, I'm pretty good. You know, I'll confess this, this, and this.
yeah,
But then, you know, what do we do in a given day?
yeah.
We doubt God a lot. We get frustrated. We get angry. Things don't go our way.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I said these saints, even at their last moment, they're signing, going, man, I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah.
That's a
It
powerful.
reminds me of you taking science courses. Any of you taking science? Like the measure, you have like the meter, and you have the centimeter, and the micrometer, the picometer. So like it depends what meter are you using. Like if you're using meters, like
I'm only 3 away.
right, my line is 100 meters away, and then you bring it closer, right? And it's like, oh look, I only have 1 meter of space. I'm getting close. But then if you measure it by picometers, then you're like, dude, you're like really far away. You know what I'm saying? So you're never quite done. I feel like that's kind of like the way it is.
I think we always remember the moment that we have to face
That's her right there.
the moment that we have to say goodbye. We should always remember that moment every day because we are not ready.
Well, that is Orthodox theology. We're supposed to keep death on the forefront of our mind all the time. Now, I'm not talking about the demented thing, you know, where I'm talking about you're supposed to keep death on the forefront of your mind. Because it could be any time. It could be at any moment, any time. Right, Mary? Right?
It happens.
You know? And do you trust God? You know, do you trust God enough to trust Him that everything that happens is not to you, it's for you? Right? And then you end up walking by faith and not by sight. Right? I mean, because sometimes we don't know what's happening. Like you said, the picometers, right? And then for me, every time I think I've gotten close, I'm like, oh man, how far away am I? I've just taken another step. I feel, oh, wait a minute, how far am I?
Yeah, because 1 meter is that's big, and then how many picometers can you fit in there? Millions. I'm still that far away.
She hasn't died.
Anybody else? Anything else?
She hasn't died. She's in separate families.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. I just, you know, we can do, like I said, when we have these night services, I think it's important for us to get together and actually spend this time wisely. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for taking the time.